I've always looked at Bollocoy and thought, what a lovely place. To strip this out and put a 21st century house in it would just be a sin.
What size of waste?
We're setting our project in the late Victorian period.
This is about being immersed in a different period in time.
Days of wind and rain, you're in the barn, tying that together and you made your homemade rope. That's how the firms used nowadays.
Sandy's beaches deny not just years, but ages. Haven't you felt, if you're lucky enough to find a virgin beach, what I feel now? That you've glimpsed the world that rose out of the waters. Undisturbed sands, air as pure as in the beginning of time. In the Orkneys you see what we're scarcely aware of except in the ocean or in the desert, the great encircling bowl of the sky.
There's so much history on this island. You scrape the surface and there's archaeology going back 10,000 years, you know. The island lives in a kind of time warp in many ways because every generation that's ever lived here has left evidence here.
Good morning. Have you got a bed here?
As far as we know, there's been settlement on this site at Bollocoy for thousands of years. But the Fays came here in the 18th century and built this house. It's a little bubble of history because so much has been untouched over time.
If you ask a question with an S, I'll answer.
Need a new gate on here.
Nice to have a wooden one. Can we not have
Half and half.
a 5-bar and then one so they've got easy access?
Dave came up here about 5 or 6 years ago and we've been doing increasingly mental projects ever since. This is the biggest yet.
The one thing you need to know about Jackie is if you talk about something, say, oh, wouldn't it be nice? And the next thing, you've got Highland cows, you've got Shetland ponies. It's here. It's a template. It's all there for somebody.
It's changed a lot in its life, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You were all down here, all the men were down here milling for the day.
Yeah.
And you stopped for your lunch and you all sat against the wall and watched exactly the same view. And from the house.
We were already developing a sense of what it used to be like. We had so much of the original family heritage left behind.
Oh, that's a proper marmalade one.
Is it?
Yeah.
From Marmalade Pub.
Yeah.
Wonder why they brought that down here.
Probably one of them coming down here for a picnic. I can still remember the first morning that I came here. We walked in and the fire was still on in the lounge. It was a very emotional moment. I just felt it had to be saved, it had to be preserved. There was no way that we could just walk away from something that's so special. There was a faded grace.
The idea just came together. Let's renovate this, but let's kind of un-renovate it in a sense. We took out all the plasterboard walls, we took out all signs of modern living, and then we tried to put it back together again as it would have been. Dave does a lot of the joinery, I do flooring, and you've got to be able to do it yourself because there is nobody here to do it.
It's always going to be challenging because at the end of the day we're an island that doesn't have a plumber, a plasterer, an electrician, a tiler. It has to be us.
When we then started clearing the house, we discovered a lot of family artefacts and we felt very strongly that we needed to give those possessions a place back in the house again.
The first really 6 months was simply deconstructing 200 years of people's lives, curating it, recording it, protecting it, preserving it.
Dave would be shouting, Jackie, Jackie, guess what I found? And I was out in the barn going through a box going, Dave, come and see this!
1720 something.
As we peeled the wallpaper off this wall, the very bottom layer is papered with Victorian ladies' fashion magazines. And this is my favourite discovery of the whole house. So we've preserved sections of these. I spent literally days prizing off pieces of wallpaper 3mm big.
I think I counted 12 different layers of wallpaper going back through history.
Orkney chairs are traditional chairs made from originally driftwood, and straw from the harvest is tied and strung onto the back. Everyone is unique.
That Orkney chair is made in the traditional fashion, so the marram grass was twisted into a cord. That's what people did of a winter's
We're
evening.
using this chair, we've got this as a fireside chair.
Yep,
And probably where your mother's chair would have been,
Yep.
right beside the fire.
yep. That's where it was. That's the chair she sat in. She was at one side of the fire and her aunt Violet was at the other.
Oh, was she?
My ancestor got the lands in the year 1762, I reckon. The house had no plumbing. There was no indoor toilets. The water that was used for washing dishes was gathered off the roof.
Right up to the 60s.
Yes, pretty well.
Electricity and running water only came to Sandy in the 70s. Keeping drafts and the cold out would have been a constant nightmare.
It wouldn't have been the darling buds of May that we see on TV. This was a hard life. You were up from sort of first thing in the morning through till late at night working.
Well, we're finding keeping it dry a challenge, so how they managed that in the 18th and 19th century, I do not know. The end wall was in a terrible state. We think we've solved the exterior problems causing the water to get in, but we've still got problems. This house is just one problem after another.
This would have also had a box bed with the doors being about here. We can't put the box bed back, but we are in the process of bringing out an early oak four-poster bed.
Dave, here's the family Bible.
There we go. John Fay. John Fay, as in John Fay written all over everything. Born in North Ronaldsay, Orkney, on the 24th of February 1849.
Fantastic.
Annie, so she was the oldest, Saturday the 26th of January. We found history about members of the family, and we kind of grew attached to some of those members of the family. Annie Fay died very early in the 20th century, and we found her portrait in her early 20s from tuberculosis. Lots of young women died of TB at that time.
I hope we're right, because it'll be beautiful to have it put in. She was a really beautiful woman, and we wanted to keep her memory alive, so we've made Annie's bedroom. The colours that were in this room as we stripped back were very twee, little sort of rosebuds and floral prints. So again, we've kind of embraced that. We found one of the original borders, and when we opened it, it was the original border that had been in this room. So we've reinstated it around the room.
Preserving history is very, very important to teach us that we live in a culture that is far too inclined to dispose of things and buy new things.
It's really important that we remember the history. We remember the way people lived. Because if we don't understand how people lived, we can't appreciate what we've got now.
And then in the middle is my brother Oliver. That's me. There's a little lad.
Here he roofed it. Oli roofed it. About 15 years ago. Oli told me my grandfather put wooden pedals on that mill on this water wheel, which must have been a way back in the 1930s, I would think. But he said that my grandfather did that. And my father, He remembers this mill grinding grain in here. There's Ollie, who is binder. I've been out to the last years he's operating the binder. We actually have a photograph at the top of this field, Ollie cutting his binder like that, and we're combine going by in the road at the same time. The old turf roof has been on all of this before, and there's Ollie putting thatch on top of the turf. That must have been done 30 years ago. But our plan now is to put a turf roof, take this off, and we'll have a turf roof putting back on this to put it back to its original condition.
People worked with nature, they didn't work against nature. We have the opportunity to do all of that again.
The idea of the mill is to provide a conservation area to increase the biodiversity down there.
That have been sort of flattened out, so something's moving along here. I want to try and find some areas around the mill here where otters are likely going to be using it as a pathway. We'll put the camera traps in, we'll set them off, leave them for a couple of months, come back and see what we've found. We've dug in various ponds which will enable different birds like the curlew, which is one of our rare breeding birds. There's 1 or 2 pairs, but we hope to increase that by at least up to about 10 pairs. As more and more land is being used for agriculture, these areas are really, really important to get the ponds back for the wading birds.
Everything has to be sustainable. So we haven't bought anything new for this house. Everything is original.
We decided to embrace what was here, and so it will possibly feel quite eclectic. Most of the wood was salvaged from broken up ships. Certainly the one over the door has still got the peg marks from where it was used on the ship. And in this beam here, we have actually got the J and the F for John Fee.
The kitchen was added in the 1950s, so there's no way we were going to be able to make this into a Victorian kitchen. So this is going to be very much in the 1940s, 1950s. I'd found, I think in Dove Cottage, a panelled wall that had been wallpapered in newsprint. So I papered underneath the stairs with an old book that we'd found.
I was varnishing last night.
Yeah.
Well, when I was varnishing, I noticed that it's Sherlock Holmes. Do you know, could you Google and see when he actually started writing for the Strand
I
magazine?
thought, I wonder how much that book was worth, you know, if it's an early Strand magazine. So I Googled Strand magazine 1901. Oh my God. First edition.
£15,000.
So I just wallpapered under the stairs with a book that might have been worth £15,000.
The family were very inventive. You wouldn't have wasted a lot of money on quality wallpaper. If you were lucky enough to get hold of a Victorian wallpaper sample book, you could cut out all the pages of that sample book.
How are we going to show the wallpaper archaeology?
We're now in the process of working to recreate this wallpaper.
I'm wondering if you could print something for me. They've wallpapered it using wallpaper samples. So we've got all these beautiful old wallpapers and we'd like to put them together into the mosaic that we can then wallpaper on the walls.
Okay.
Is it a possibility?
We can give it a go.
We can give it a go. Fantastic. So what? Right way up. We're putting in 4 full days a week. We've taken it from the point where it was completely gutted to start and putting it all back together again. a rag rug made in the late 19th, early 20th century. These are cut from old discarded clothing. They very often had this diamond or eye design in them, keeping the household and the hearth safe from evil spirits.
Night, dear. I hope these boards stay.
Get that.
Like the different eras, haven't we? So that's sort of like
Right, Jackie, we've got some footage here from the trail cams that we put out earlier in the year. So apart from the old pheasant and rabbit, we also managed to capture this. Looks like a young female otter.
Oh, wow.
And I've also found the first kestrel nest I've ever found on sand.
This afternoon we've invited some local people to come for afternoon tea so we can have a chat about the old days and show them around the house and see what they remember.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
originally this was their kitchen. So the two side.
It's just exactly like that. So did we. Vem släpp hit som träs. Jag fick en dit som träs. We didn't have a box bed. Sheila and I shared it until we were about 18. It was sat like this. So we sat on the shelves in the box beds. They used to, children would sleep on top of that.
Really?
Up there. It was lovely and warm in there. And then I got my pipe going. It was just... Threshed it at the middle and they tied it in windlass. They robbed round it and carried it up on their back.
It's a really special place, you know, we can't just like that.
Below the Myers. There was always a kestrel nest there in Brie.
I lifted the puffin and brought it into my house. I went like this. I got bitten.
Right.
Okay. And there's Wally.
Tranquility is minimally physical. It dwells in heart and mind. It needs a useful and satisfying part to play in a familiar world. And above all, it needs the reassuring warmth of close personal ties.
I never thought it would happen. And did your heart not sink when you went, how are we ever going to do this?
If we don't learn and pass on, the next bits get lost along the way.
It's changed the way that I think and the way that I live my life in just 2 years.
Maybe I've lived too long away from simplicity.